it's all right. We're still. He's written over 600 comic books for DC, which is more than any other modern day author. I mean, just think about the amount of time it takes to come up with characters and write storylines, and to write 600 is impressive. Multiple award-winning, New York Times bestseller, and we were telling the children earlier today, so we had a workshop for area youth that Geoff ran on creating comic book superheroes, and it was fantastic. And the kids found out that growing up he was a big fan of He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and he designed his own character named Sir Laser-a-Lot. Oh, Sir Laser-Lot, sorry, I don't want to mess it up there. Which, Mattel is taking this design of his and turning it into a toy, so many years later. Besides comic books, Geoff has worked on television series, Smallville, Blade the series. He's just an amazing creative guy. He's creative director of DC Comics, right? Close enough. So much information going on right now. He also owns his own comic book in comic book store in Los Angeles, right? Yeah. So we're glad to have him, and we're also really proud that the museum was the birthplace of his newest comic book character, Dr. Tomato Guy, who was just fantastic, and a young boy from the area. Geoff was saying, we need a sidekick for this character we're coming up with, and this kid raises his hand and says, how about a tomato? And Jeff's like, okay, I guess that could work. And what's his name? The kid's like, Tomato Guy. We're like, of course it is. It's Dr. Tomato Guy. So it was perfect. It was a perfect way to show the creativity of youth and how Geoff, through his work and his passion for inspiring that in young people, came to fruition today. And we're very happy to have him with us. And so without further ado, we're going to have him come up and talk about his work. So welcome, Geoff.
Thanks, Matt. I wanted to say first off, thank you to Matt and the entire museum for hosting this event and for just being so supportive and great and informative on everything we're doing right now. It really means a lot to me personally, and this is an amazing, amazing place. I've never been here before, but it's really impressive. I guess my grandma's been here like 3 times, she said, so good for her. I'm going to just kind of ramble a little bit about where I'm from, how I got into comics, what I do, what my influences are, and then I'll do some Q&A after that. But it was really fun working with kids today. Dr. Tomato Guy actually turned out to be a pretty cool character, and seeing kids so excited and imaginative about everything. And it really reminded me of when I was a kid and how I got my imagination sparked by comic books. And it really, I want to thank my grandmother and my parents who are here, which is really neat, because it started with them and it was fostered through them. So I really appreciate that because it's made my life a lot more fulfilling and interesting than working in insurance. So my brother and I first discovered superheroes, and superheroes really are what speaks to me more than anything else. Like, I love comic books, but it's really superheroes and the idea of superheroes that I've always been fascinated by, whether it's what they look like or why they do what they do, what their powers are. And it started way back when, long time ago, with my brother and I digging into my grandmother's closet in, I think it was in Livonia. And she had this old box of comic books that were from the 60s that belonged to my dad and his brothers. They were all tattered up. There were Flashes and Green Lanterns, and Batmans and Supermans. My brother and I just poured over and over them, and I just was fascinated by these characters who had these great abilities and were saving people and had adventures and were going up against, space whales and giant monsters and bad guys. And it was really my first exposure to comic books. And then I started seeing the animated series like Super Friends, where we had Batman, Superman, and Green Lantern, and all these other characters. And I started getting into comic books. And my brother and I, one summer, we moved from Grosse Pointe up to Clarkston, and so we didn't know anybody, and we started reading comics more and more and more, and we got really into comic books, and my parents didn't really love that at that point. We couldn't drive yet, so we always asked them to take us down to the flea market or the comic shop, and there was one comic shop called Truman's Comics, and we'd go there and buy old comics, and we just kind of had an affinity for DC characters, and it probably culminated in a episode where I wasn't a great kid at some point, I'm sure, and my mom grounded me, but she didn't ground me like a regular kid. She took my comics and grounded me from buying comic books. And this was the week that Flash #1 was out, and Flash #1 was my favorite character. Like, Flash is my favorite character of all time, and so my friend, I don't know if you know this, Mom, my friend came to the window, and I gave him 75 cents, and he went down to the drugstore and bought and he came back out. And so anyway, I read that, and that was the only comic I had because my mom took my box. So I read that Flash comic over and over and over. I got really inspired. Sorry. But I owe you one for the Boba Fett. Do you remember that? I'll tell the Boba Fett story later. That's a good one. But anyway, so I got really inspired by that one comic and by all these characters, and so I used to draw my own characters, and I started to draw more and more. And I would draw my characters, and at first they were probably just, you know, kind of homages, like this one looked like the Hulk or this one looked like Superman. And I started to stray a little bit and find my own characters, like Sir Laser-Lot, which is a hilarious name, but it works. But anyway, so I really got into comics, and for a long, long time I wanted to be an artist. So I took art classes and I drew comics, and the one thing that my parents never did is say, don't do that. My mom, later I found out my mom thought, she didn't say that because she thought I outgrow it, but they were still very supportive, and so that allowed me to kind of continue my passion and be really, really interested in comics. And so over the years, I just created more and more characters. I wrote my own stories. I always wanted to get into comic books. I never really strayed from that path since I was a little kid. And I ended up going to Michigan State University, which is a great school. But I will admit a little bit why I went to that school, is that they had 2 comic shops right off campus. And so that was really important to me. So they had 2 comic shops off campus, so I could get into this. And so I went there and I studied film, and I studied media arts, and I did some art. And during a class, I actually wanted to, I started getting more into film. I wanted to direct. I thought, like, oh, maybe directing is going to be more interesting. But then I was in a directing class, and I wrote a 10-minute film, a script. And I had a lot of fun writing it. I wrote it. My friend said, oh, I have an idea, but I don't know how to write. Will you write this? I said, sure. So I wrote his, and then some other kid said, hey, will you write mine? I said, sure, and I wrote his, and then I started to realize, oh, you know, I think maybe I want to write. Like, maybe this is my calling. Maybe I should just write. So I wrote everyone's scripts for them. And some of them weren't very good, but I was still new. And for all you writers, like I could say, your first script's never going to be good. The first time I pulled out of the driveway, I hit the tree at the end of the driveway, which I got out of the car and there was a little dent here, and I'm like, oh my God, and then below it was a big dent. But the next time I drove out of the driveway, I didn't hit the tree. And the point being is that I got better. And so the more that you write for yourself, if you want to be a writer, the better you get. Because you just kind of see the mistakes you make, and you learn how to do these, and how to fix them up. But anyway, I went to Michigan State, and I studied screenwriting, and I got really into that. And again, super supported by my parents, which was great. And I saved up money to move off to Los Angeles. I actually wanted to graduate early, but I couldn't make it. I just couldn't get enough credits. But I saved up $1,500. I told my parents I had $4,000 apparently. I don't remember this, but I said, I have $4,000, I'll be fine. But I had $1,500, and I got in a U-Haul with 3 of my friends, and we drove across country. And you'd think, like, oh wow, driving cross country at 22 years old, you're gonna go see everything. You're gonna go to North Dakota, and you're gonna go across the whole country. We actually got there in 3 days because we just were like, let's go there. So we got there really quick, and I regretted it. That's the only thing I regret, actually, in my life, probably, is that trip, because we just drove full on. And I got there, I didn't know anybody, and my impression was that I was going into a town full of people that knew how to write and knew what they were doing and were already set up, and I was very intimidated. I was a little worried about it, to be honest. I think I just had moved there on sheer inertia and hadn't realized, oh my God, I moved to Los Angeles. What a mistake. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I started to look at all the people I admired, And one of them was a director named Richard Donner. I don't know if guys are familiar with Richard Donner, but he directed, yeah, he's great. He directed Superman the movie. And Superman the movie was, for me, my favorite film ever, and I think it really pioneered what superhero films are. Superman the movie took itself very seriously, but it was still a lot of fun. And I used to ask Dick these questions. I sent a letter to him and he didn't respond. But one day I called his office and I said, "Hi, I'm looking for an internship." And the voice on the phone said, "Hold on," they transferred me. Another person picked up the phone and I said, "Hi, I'm looking for an internship." And they said, "Hold on," they transferred me again. Another person picked up the phone and said, "I'm looking for an internship, hold on." Transferred me again and finally this big growly voice yanks the phone off and says, "Hello?" And I said, "I'm looking for an internship." And it was Richard Donner, this director, who had just inadvertently picked up the phone. And I heard him yell off the phone, "Someone get this kid an internship," and everyone picked the phone up. And so I said, "I'm looking for an internship." He said, "Can you come in tomorrow? Someone quit today." I said, "Great, how much does it pay?" "Nothing." "Okay, it's still a job." So the next day I went to Warner Brothers where his office was located. And again, I didn't really know what I was doing. I wanted to be a writer. I didn't know where to start, but I thought working for a director is probably a pretty good place. I always liked working with directors when I was writing in college. So I showed up in a tie, and no one else wore a tie. They told me not to wear a tie again. You might get caught in the copy machine. You're going to be out all day. So the first day, I got on this big Warner Brothers lot, and I saw the water tower that's in all the cartoons, and I was pretty freaked out. And but it wasn't very busy. It was just kind of like a normal place. And I went to the office, and I show up, and then Dick Donner's not there because he's off doing whatever. And I show up. I said, "Hi, I'm the intern." They said, "Copy this script." They give me a script, and I said, "Okay, how many copies?" They said, 35. I said, "All right." So I was copying the script, and it must have took me 7 or 8 hours. Like my fingers were hurting, like it was like I had paper cuts everywhere. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the worst mistake I've ever made. Like moving on to LA, copying scripts, like no one knows my name. They're like, "Hey John, get over here." I still get that a little bit when they see my name reversed. But I felt for that moment, I felt like, wow, what am I going to tell my parents? Like when I hey, I need money to move home. And I don't know what I'm going to do when I get home. And I just thought, like, this isn't enjoyable, this isn't fun. But I remembered something that they started asking me to do other things, and I started getting more comfortable. And I remembered something that Stan Lee said. And if you guys don't know who Stan Lee is, he basically created the entire Marvel Universe. Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Avengers, he created all those. And Stan Lee said when he was an intern, he used to run everywhere. And he ran everywhere. I read this somewhere. He ran everywhere so that people would know you could rely on him. And coming from Michigan, especially my dad kicking me in the butt a lot, I had a pretty good work ethic. So I was like, I guess I'll run everywhere too. So everything they would give me, I'd run everywhere. I'd trip once in a while, but I made it. And so they knew that, hey, Geoff will get things done. He's fast, he's reliable. Okay, we'll give it to him. And about 3 months into the internship, I got a job, and they hired me as the PA, which is a production assistant out there. And that means you essentially are getting paid to go get coffee. But I was getting paid, that was the point. And I could pay my rent, which was $300, and I was excited about it. I called my parents and told them about it. And my first day on the job, they said, "Okay, you need to go to Hollywood and pick this up." So this is before GPS, because I'm much older than I look. And so there's no GPS, so I said, okay, I gotta drive from Burbank to Hollywood. And all I knew is that there was a big mountain in the middle of Burbank and Hollywood. So I drove around the mountain, not knowing there was a road right there. And so they called me on this giant satellite cell phone that was in the car. And they said, "Where are you? Like, what's going on? You've been gone for 2 hours." I said, "I'm almost there." They said, "What do you mean you're almost there? It's 10 minutes away." I said, "Well, no, I drove this way." And they're like, "Oh my," I thought I was gonna get fired right there. But you had patience, and so I got what they needed, and I drove back over the hill the easy way, and I was back in 10 minutes. So again, like, hopefully that's the lesson. Like, you can make mistakes. Like, I learn by making mistakes. That's how I've always learned. I'm not very good when I start something, but I get really, really good if I keep doing it. And that's been in every job I've done.